Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of 5 Facts. Today we're going to be talking about the 2005 possession movie, The Exorcism of Emily Rose. This one's from director Scott Derrickson, who would go on to direct Sinister, as well as the Marvel movie Doctor Strange. But anyway, let's get to the facts. Fact number 1. Jennifer Carpenter went above and beyond for this role. Scott Derrickson, the film's director, decided to cast Jennifer Carpenter on the spot for this. At her audition, she just blew everybody away with how she was able to just channel this inner demon. Part of what won her the role is her extraordinary flexibility, as well as the silent scream she worked out prior to the audition. Carpenter would spend hours in front of a room full of just so many mirrors so she could twist her body and try to get the right facial expressions and really get into this role. That was before she even auditioned. The crew had planned to use more CGI as well as a few dummies that could really contort and twist, but because of Carpenter's ability to do this, they decided it would be a lot more convincing if they just used her instead. Fact number 2. The University of Minnesota students claim that one of their dorms is haunted because of Emily Rose. The U of M Pioneer dorm where Emily Rose was supposedly possessed is said to be haunted because of the events this movie depicted. Since Emily Rose is entirely fictional and based on a German woman who never went to the United States, it's a little bit absurd. It's a fun rumor, but it really doesn't hold any sort of weight at all under even the slightest bit of scrutiny. But college kids gotta have their fun somehow. Fact number 3. Scott Derrickson wanted to make a new perspective on exorcism and possession. Scott Derrickson wanted to make a movie that made people ask more questions than it answered. He wanted to have a logic-based discussion overlapped with the spiritual ideas. He told Jennifer Carpenter that if it wasn't new, he wasn't going to put it in his movie. And in a few ways he succeeded, in a few other ways he didn't. Rather than drawing on movies that had covered this before, like The Exorcist, he watched movies like Rashomon, the works of Dario Argento, and 1928's The Passion of Joan of Arc. Jennifer Carpenter also said that she had actually never seen The Exorcist before this movie and still hadn't seen it afterwards because she didn't want to be trying to emulate Linda Blair. Fact number 4, and this is going to be a long one. This film is based on the actual court trial covering the death of Annalise Michel. The film is not a direct adaptation of the death of Annalise Michel, but it is heavily based on it. She suffered for many years, starting in the early 70s. She had epileptic fits and was diagnosed with grand mal epilepsy. By 1973, she developed depression as well as visual and auditory hallucinations. She was on the verge of being suicidal at this point. Her behavior became more erratic, and she had started eating spiders and bugs, biting the head off of birds, and sometimes would scream for days on end. There was a time where she actually stayed under a table barking like a dog for 2 whole days. There are some seriously creepy translated recordings of her speaking in many languages, sometimes in what sounds like dual voices. You listen to her just as a normal, 18 and 20-year-old girl, and she just sounds so normal, kind of sweet. And then you just hear these recordings, and it's very much like a different person. By 1975, her family decided that she was possessed instead of having mental illness, and that the normal treatments were not going to work, so they sought the help of their priest. Priest Ernst Alt and Father Arnold Renz would go on to perform the rites of exorcism 67 times before her body gave out. Each of these were intensely physical rites that would take up to 4 hours to complete. It was very hard on the girl. And it's made much worse, and the thing she actually ended up dying of when she was 24 years old was a mix of dehydration and malnutrition, according to the coroner. She weighed only 68 pounds at the time of her death. Afterwards, her parents and the 2 priests involved were convicted of manslaughter resulting of negligence. They were sentenced to 6 months in prison and 3 years of probation each. Fact number 5. The rite of exorcism we see in this film has been changed and made rarer by John Paul II. While this isn't entirely a fact about the film, it is an interesting thing I uncovered while looking this up. The rite given in this film is only a small piece of the Ritual Romanum, which was made in the 1600s. In recent years, the language used in the ritual was changed to make it a little bit more ambiguous. Instead of casting out a demon, they make it so that they're if there is a demon in there, it's just kind of a weird way of making it so it's not directing the person and forcing them to believe and goading them into thinking that they're actually possessed. I'm not sure how much the language has changed. I couldn't find the direct translations, but it is interesting that they would switch this sort of language up. And I don't know if it's a liability thing or what's going on here, but it is interesting that they changed it in the 50s and 70s. Pope John Paul II changed the rules again after this trial and made it so that it would only be used in the most dire of circumstances. Before this, there were actually a lot of exorcism cases going around the world, especially in Germany and Europe at the time. And this made it so that they were a lot less likely to approve an exorcism to happen. He encouraged priests to stay and pray with the people that they were working with, but that most of the time it was probably mental illness rather than possession that was actually causing the issue. The Exorcism of Emily Rose is a fascinating take on the idea of possession as much as it is a horror movie about it. By entwining a legal drama with something so faith-based, the writer was able to analyze the symptoms and reasons for possession from a science-based perspective, while also taking a deeper look into the spiritual struggle within. They wanted to give reasons why someone might have stigmata wounds, or why somebody would be able to contort themselves and put themselves into these situations with seizures. It's not a perfect movie. There are times where the acting seems jilted and unconvincing, especially in the court scenes. However, Jennifer Carpenter makes up for a lot of this when she goes all out. Anytime that she's on the screen and possession is happening, it's absolutely enthralling. Especially the part where she's talking about being possessed by 6 spirits, the screaming, just all of it. She did a fantastic job with this. This happened right before she went on to Dexter, and now she's pretty much everywhere. She's still on a current TV show on, I think, ABC. So, her career pretty much started here, and it's fun to go back and check that out. Even with these faults, I found the story fascinating. I really want to read more about the Exorcism of Annalise Michel as well. I'm very much a skeptic, but listening to those tapes will give almost anyone reason to think deeper about their spiritual ideas. While I truly do believe that it was brutal mental illness along with incompetent doctoring, the idea of something more is so terrifying that it can't be ignored. Really, possession is so much the stealing of the self, the complete vanquishing of control as you get used as a marionette for nefarious deeds, most often by a being of pure evil. While most possession movies aren't all that convincing to me, there are moments of real terror in The Exorcism of Emily Rose. It's worth a watch, if only for the possession scenes. I want to thank all of you for watching. This movie was suggested by our good friend John Jones. If you have any other suggestions for movies you'd like to see hit the 5-fact circuit, let me know. I will consider them. Otherwise, thank you all for watching. Check out our Patreon. And also check out our new podcast, Bad Ideas. It's a little different from horror, but I think you guys are going to like it. And yeah, I will see you in 2 weeks.